into the Badlands Season 2, Episode 8, Sting of the Scorpion's Tail. This episode I really loved. We got to see, of course, I was excited for this last week. We got to see Chau and her people come back into play. We got to see a lot more of the costume design and the setup and like her whole white outfit aesthetic, so I thought that was really great. We get to see her compound, which is very similar to the other guy who we find out is actually dead alongside his wife and his children. The guy who ran the conclave in the other episode, she has a compound that's similar to his. I'm assuming that's just a set production sort of thing where it's like, we're going to say that this is a different area, but both places look like castles, and for some odd reason I was like, oh, that's the exact same color of gravel. I don't know why I noticed that, but that's actually what made me realize it was the same set. Unless they do some crazy comic book stuff after the season ends, it's like, this is why their compounds look like this, which they probably might. They might actually already have that, but I thought it was really great to see her come into play again, and I'm very curious where they're going to go with things because she actually doesn't end up dying, because they start the episode off with Hassan being killed off by the widow and her people, which was actually a really great sequence with like the silhouettes and stuff, very old school samurai style with like people when they're like in the homes and stuff behind the shutters. It was very cool, so I love that sequence. That was just great. Like, it was really crazy because he just got like completely wiped out, and it was cool to see him fight too because he has a different type of weapon. He almost has like a rapier, so it was really fun getting to see him fight. I kind of wish it could last a little bit longer because he was like using the sheath and the sword a little bit to block, and I was like, that's cool. I like when I get to see that sort of stuff because it just feels really unique because that doesn't really come up too often. So it was nice to see that, but of course both weapons get knocked out of his hand, and then he's on the run. Of course, the widow ends up capturing him, and he tries to take her down. He has like one little blade, and she just slices his arm off, and then she takes his head. And I was like, okay, well, that's it. Clearly this is the start of some madness. So he's dead. She takes his head to Quinn. We find out that he killed the guy who ran the conclave, and of course he did some other crazy crap, which pissed off the widow. So they've killed those two barons to kind of show like, we definitely have a deal here. And of course that also shortens the ranks of who they have to contend with in the future. So I thought that was good. Kind of to jump to Quinn, because I hated him the most in this episode, I gotta say. But going from that first sequence where he talks about the rest of the heads were this guy's lineage, that's a big part of his story in this episode, because of course, we've known from the very beginning, like his whole thing is that he wants Henry as his son, and he found a way to kind of make it official where he, well, actually, I was about to say he tries, but he actually does end up marrying Vale, and I hated that. Like, just the whole thing was like, it's such good writing, but it's just horrible to watch because I hate this guy so much. But it's just, that's how well done the character is. It's that character you love to hate, and I hate him so much. But they end up getting married, and Vale's plan, as she's talking with Lydia, which was really crazy. I was like, man, Lydia ends up being the one to actually marry the two of them, which is probably crazy in its own right for her. But Vale's idea is to kill Quinn, regardless of what would happen to her. She wants Lydia to protect Henry, so she's like, protect Henry no matter what. Lydia tries to take off, but she gets busted just as some very important news comes along, so that ultimately ends up saving both Quinn and Vale, technically, because, as Lydia put it, if you kill him, his loyalists will just kill you. Like, there's no reason for them to not kill you after you've killed him. They'll just kill you for revenge. So technically, she ends up saving both their lives because she's like, well, we have to tell Quinn right now that Sonny's alive and stuff. So she ends up kind of fixing that whole situation because it was getting really crazy. And I wouldn't have minded if Vale ended up killing him, but of course that would have led to her death. So I'm like, all right, because it allows Vale to live, I guess he gets to survive too, so it's fine. But I did like the way that they kind of made it all play out, and Lydia was trying to do the best that she could, and she was trying to escape. But she still gets that little silver lining where it's like, I may not have been able to escape with Henry, but I was able to technically save Vale and also give her a bit of hope, which kind of ends out the episode where she's, Vale is much happier because she knows officially Sonny is now alive and most likely coming for Quinn. So I thought that was a great way to end the episode where we have such a crappy moment for Vale to, experience, and then it ends with a lot of hope where not only does she get to live, even though, like I said, unfortunately, so does Quinn, but she gets that hope that now she can, kind of be spared from all this travesty while also being alive and happy with her son as well as with Sonny. So really enjoyed the way they ended it, where her story ultimately gets a bit of hope, by the end of it. So I certainly appreciated that. But everything else was really good in this episode too. The action, of course, was definitely great. We have our great big fight sequence between Sunny, the Widow, and Chau's men, and also the dolls as well. We don't, of course, the dolls are just extra, so they don't focus on them, but we get to see Tilda fight. We get to see MK fight, which I actually really enjoyed his fighting in this because he didn't really have a weapon. So a lot of his fighting was him like countering people and like knocking the swords out of their hands. And I actually enjoyed that because he was running through like most of that fight because it was like he didn't have a weapon outside of that little knife. And also, just because you know how to fight doesn't mean you're trained with like every weapon in existence. So you have Chau's men who are using like katanas and wakizashis, and it's like I don't think we've ever seen him actually use anything outside of like large swords, like when he was in the first season with Sunny, and then like the bow staff is pretty much all we saw him train with when he was with the Abbot. So I was like, I like seeing him in this fight where it's like he's able to hold his own, but it's getting real close. Every time they cut to him, it's getting closer and closer, and then ultimately Tilda ends up saving him in that last second when he's about to die, and she just hits the dude with the shuriken. So I love that sequence. Like I said, for Chau's character, like the aesthetic of them, just seeing them all come in was really great. And one thing I really love for their characters, and this is something, everybody has their different styles. We know that everyone has their different weapons, but I really love Chau's people because not only were their outfits really freaking sweet, especially when Sunny got his, I was like, man, his outfit is even cooler than the rest of theirs because it's like an official jacket. Everyone else kind of had just like straps and stuff, and I was like, that looks cool, but his was like an official jacket and it just looked really sweet. But their weapons were super awesome because, of course, with me being Invisiblekatana, I actually do love katanas and stuff. So one of the things I noticed during the bus sequence is that all the guys had, basically they had 3 weapons. So of course they used the crossbows, which is a cool thing that I was looking forward to based on the promo, so that was pretty awesome. They also looked really sweet, not just the fact that they had crossbows, because I was already excited, but when they actually show them and they're like, the whole aesthetic is like white and gold and it's even on these crossbows, I was like, that is actually really freaking cool. So I really love seeing that. But the guy that was in charge, he actually had a katana while everyone else had wakizashi. So I thought that was great because just a random lesson. Katana are like 2-handed blades, so like he'd have to pull it out and then hold it like this. But a wakizashi, you just pull it out and you can hold it. Technically, you can use 2 if the hilt is long enough. But it's basically meant to be short enough, like the blade is short enough and it's light enough that you can just hold it and just use like one hand. Kind of like what the Widow does with her weapons, but they're just straight long swords, that's all they are. Or short swords, I guess. But I thought that was awesome because they're actual katanas. The dolls use katanas as well. Like they show that quite often, but we mostly see the Widow fight. She has like short swords, and then Tilda typically uses like the small daggers. So even though the dolls always use katanas, it's never like focused on, but I'm like, at least they're there. So I'm just, obviously I really do like katanas. So it was great to see that with Chau's people, and that little bit of attention to detail, like the guy in charge has a katana while everyone else has like a single-handed blade. I just really love that. It was just like a cool aesthetic to show like ranking and how you can have a longer weapon and stuff like that, because there are so many different types of blades and stuff, like katanas and wakizashi. There's like a million names, and then you get down to like tantos, which are just daggers. But I thought it was really cool. It's like a very small aesthetic, but I was like, that's a really great little bit of detail to have for that group, where it's like this person in charge has this weapon, everyone else has this type of weapon. So I really love that. But of course, Sunny ends up making his deal. He's really like Baron hopping at this point, which I kind of love, because of course he ends up going to Chau because he reveals that he's a Clipper. He makes a deal with her to get rid of the Widow because that'll allow him to get free and get to Vale and his son. He's actually able to help Badgie because we find out why he stole the little clip, because I was like, I wonder why he did that. So he ends up making it seem like he doesn't give a crap. He's leaving Badgie behind, drops the little clip in his pocket so that Badgie can escape. Ultimately he does, but instead of taking off, he actually follows behind Sunny and MK, which I thought was really cool. But the most interesting thing is that he didn't actually jump into the fight like I thought he would. So my guess is he's going to end up following Sunny, considering he jumped from working with Chau to kill the Widow to working with the Widow, because she knows, of course, where Bill and Henry are. So he jumps from that. That's how we get our epic fight sequence. And Badgie is kind of just in the window like, things are crazy. And that was pretty much it. So I'm assuming, based on the promo, of course, Sunny finds out the truth when he learns from one of Quinn's Clippers, the young guy. He finds out that, of course, Belle and Henry are back with Quinn because of the Widow. So he ends up fighting like a bunch of dudes in the promo. So maybe Badgie will end up helping him there, and that's where we get to see how that plays out. We don't really get to see what happened with MK after this kind of falls apart and we find out, they both find out what happened to Vale and Henry. But I'm excited to see how that plays out. We also have the very great, I don't know how this is going to end, but the very great conflict between Tilda and the Widow. I'm super excited for that. We get to see them, actually, we get to see the Widow use one of her swords and then she gives the other one to Tilda. So I'm very excited for that. Which also brings up a very interesting point. In this episode, we don't actually see the Widow use both blades. I thought that was very interesting because typically in like the really big action sequences, I feel like she always uses both blades. And in this one, the whole way through, she just used one. And I was like, that's really weird because they were definitely surrounded. She could have used both, but she only used one. Maybe she just feels like they're so weak. She is that badass. But it was just like, man, that's weird. We normally see her use both. And in this case, it was just like, it wasn't exactly too close quarters, but I was like, she could have used both, but I guess they just decided, let's switch it up a little, and she just went with one blade and was, of course, taking everybody out. Sunny was using the staff, which he actually cut off, and so now it's almost like a sword, which I thought was really cool, because I was like, oh man, it's way shorter, because he cut like the staff, he cut like a giant chunk of the staff off of it, so now it's more like a sword compared to the long staff it was originally. So I thought that was a cool change that, they don't really talk about it, you just notice it like, oh, he's holding it just like, with two hands like a katana. So I was like, that's really awesome that he, chopped it off like that. So fight scene was awesome. Badgie didn't really jump in, so it makes me wonder where they're headed with that. But really love this episode. I'm very excited to see where they go with the rest of the Barons, because of course, Chau ends up surviving. She doesn't even play a part really outside of making the deal with Sunny, and she even says like, well, if he kills them, sweet, and if he doesn't, we don't lose anything, like we don't lose any men. Unfortunately, that ends up being wrong. They lose quite a few men, and so now she'll be pissed off with Sunny, and that might not really come into effect considering we're going to like the last 2 episodes, sadly. But it should still be interesting. Maybe season 3, which the show has officially been renewed for a 3rd season, which I believe is supposed to be 16 episodes. So we're getting an even longer season 3. So I'm super excited to mention that to you guys. For anyone who may not have known, I saw that news like in between this episode and the last episode, and I was like, sweet. So I want to make sure I mention that. We are officially getting a season 3 for anyone who may have been wondering. And like I said, I believe it's supposed to be 16. I know it was, I know it's going to be an extended season compared to even this one. So we went from 6 to 10 to possibly 16 episodes. So I'm very excited for that. We get longer seasons, and, eventually maybe it'll get to like, Walking Dead style where we get like, 20 episode seasons and stuff. I would love that. But for now, we're working with our short seasons, and it's super freaking sweet, and I'm excited for us to get into these last 2 episodes. This was really great. It's definitely one of my favorites. Honestly, it was a simple story. It was like we go from point A to point B to point C, and we work with this person, we make up a lie here, and then we end up working with this person because the situation changed, and we still have Badgie as kind of like this outside thing where he could have jumped in, but he didn't, so we have to wait and see what he ends up doing next week. So I'm really looking forward to more truths getting revealed to Sunny about, the stuff with the Widow. Everything that's going to happen with Quinn, because like he's going to bolster his defenses, I would assume. Or he's just going to go ahead and try to attack the Widow. I don't think he'll do that because that's just dumb. She has so many people since she was kind of taking everybody in to join her. I highly doubt he'd do that because that would just be idiotic. But it's hard to say. You never know considering how crazy the guy is. You just don't know what's going to happen. But he seems smarter than that, so I don't think we'll get like a full-on invasion where he tries to do that again. But really love this episode, of course. Would love to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, least favorite parts, and I definitely want to know where you guys think things are headed for these last 2 episodes. Of course, with the promo, we know, like I said, Sunny's going to be kind of Baron hopping again, so he left Chau, and by the end of this one, he's going to be leaving the Widow because of what he ends up finding out there. I'm assuming his whole point is to kill Quinn, which it would be very interesting. I don't know. I would love to know your guesses if you guys think he'll actually survive past this season. Because I'm like, he's got to die. The tumor is super huge. They could easily do it where he does live through this season and then he dies in the next season naturally. Because they don't have to skip, they don't have to do the 6-month thing anymore if they don't want to. So I was like, either he gets killed or he lives and then he just dies naturally. Or maybe he still ends up getting killed in like, season 3 or something. But we'd love to know where you guys think we're headed for these last 2 episodes of the season. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.